How are you today? We're in front of a car today. I'm sure you can tell that. What we're going to look at doing today, I think, might be a nice idea. It's just a bit of a pre-journey kind of look at what you do with the car if you're not paying someone else to do it. I have a great deal of joy in owning a motor vehicle. And I think when you own a motor vehicle and you like the motor vehicle, what you need to do is look after the motor vehicle. There's various aspects to that. Sometimes it's safety, sometimes it's reliability, sometimes it's just appearance. And somewhere, if there's a Venn diagram, somewhere where those three things meet is what we do with our car. I tend to take quite a hands-on approach with my vehicles. I've driven this car in every state and territory of Australia, as far north as basically the Tropic of Capricorn and south. It will go north of that, I think, one day. Not sure what day that is, but if we're going to do it, this is possibly the car I'm going to do it in. I do have if you've hung out with me before, I should say, you'll know that I've got another one of these, but 10 years newer. That's my new work car. This was my old work car. This has been in the family for 12 years. Never to be sold. This car goes with me throughout my life. She needs a new paint job, as you can see. Her name's Lois, by the way. This is Lois. I'd like to introduce you to Lois, as named by my sister, who was the first owner of this car 12 years ago in our family, first owner in our family. I've made various changes to this vehicle in the 6 or so years that I've owned it. One of those things is, various aesthetics. A little bit of grippy paint on the side steps here. These were originally all aluminium. And as you can hear, it's a little bit more grippy now. I've painted the wheels, I've changed the wheels. I've added new luxuries inside for the passenger and the driver. A little bit of wood grain. Some new instruments to tell me what's happening. And a couple of years ago, this car reached 500,000 kilometres, which is quite good. Not unusual for these engines, but quite good for cars in general. I think you can get a lot more out of it if you really nurse the engine. Just after that 500,000 kilometre milestone, I decided to have the engine rebuilt. So that's got 25,000 kilometres on it now. is in stark contrast with the paint, which has 500,000. This car has new suspension, and I've just replaced things as it's been needed. But what I want to go through with you today is, before going on a drive, I'm going to Perth tomorrow, 5 hours drive, and I want to just kind of give a little look over and make sure everything's going to be nice for the journey and not leave me stranded. It's not that this car has ever done that. I've driven about 60,000 kilometres in this car, and not once have I been left stranded. She starts every time, which is very reassuring to have a car like that, especially when it's this age. And this is from that special era of cars, 1992. Toyota was at the peak through the 90s and early 2000s, at the peak of its game with a lot of cars. And this is one of the reasons why this car, the 80 series, HDJ 80 Land Cruiser, factory import from Japan via Toyota and sold in Toyota dealerships. I like to just have a little look over of the engine, so let's pop over and have a look. So here we are. Engine bay of the HDJ 80, and as I mentioned, there's a couple of alterations here. I'm not showing off at all, but I may as well tell you about stuff. If you're familiar with these, you'll notice that there's some things that are somewhat different. If you're unfamiliar with them, then you won't notice anything different apart from nothing, maybe just a little bit shiny. So these two pipes are the main noticing feature, through here and here. They run off to the front mounted intercooler, which is an aftermarket option on this vehicle. Another optional extra that I have over the other side in the darkness there is a catch can that was placed in there as a diagnostic tool to discover whether the minor oil leak I had was coming from the turbocharger or from the engine. That's now been resolved. However, I decided to leave the catch can on there. There are various arguments as to whether it's beneficial or not on this engine, but all the same, I have one there. It has a very neat little dipstick for checking the oil levels within the catch can. And over this side you'll notice that's where the oil filter normally is. The fuel filter normally is here. I've constructed a mounting bracket to change all of this area and add in what is called an oil bypass filter system, which is this canister here, and that what that does in essence is it siphons off around 10% of the oil at any time, and runs it through this filter rather than the standard oil filter, which is down here. The standard oil filter is perfectly adequate. It filters your oil to approximately 40 micron, which is nice. However, with the oil bypass filter working in conjunction or augmenting your standard filter, this lovely canister will filter your oil down to 1 or 2 micron, which, for those of you who are familiar with that kind of size, it's much finer filtration. It removes a lot of the contaminants such as water and acid, as well as larger particles that the standard oil filter will not remove, thereby giving you much more effective filtration. It can increase the life of your oil by quite a lot. Your service intervals would go from, say, 5,000 or 8,000 kilometres out to easily 10 or 15,000 kilometres with the use of this, resulting in fewer oil changes and a saving of money. After it gets filtered, this system runs it via a hose up through and drops it back into the oil cap into the top of the engine there, adding extra lubrication to your valve train up here. That is obviously an extra that I have added on. But anyway, I digress. What we're here to do is check out what's going on here prior to driving on a long journey. What we're really wanting to do is just observe the engine bay and certain critical features that we have in here. We monitor them periodically to make sure everything is in order. We should have a look at things like this canister here. This is the power steering fluid reservoir. What we want to do is we want to unscrew that. It only takes half a turn. Have a look at the condition of the oil. We'll see if I bring it over here, if the camera focuses on that. I have a hot side and a cold side. Cold and hot. And we want to see that this oil is in good condition and up to the required marker position. So we just use a rag here so that we don't get drips everywhere, and we come in and we have a look. Say, oh yes, we want to be at the top of that mark there, which we are. The oil is nice and clean. We'll just wipe that off with a nice clean rag and replace that cap. You'll know soon enough if your power steering fluid is too low, because your power steering pump will make quite an unattractive noise. We'll come over to the engine's lifeblood next, which is this. It says engine oil on it. It's a little pull handle, and we can slide out the dipstick. We start by just wiping it off with that clean rag, and we'll dip it back in full depth. Make sure it's all the way in. Now we pull that out and we walk into the light. And once again, you can see the full mark there. You can see the condition of the oil. It's fairly clear. I have just changed this oil notoriously dark on a diesel, and we then just wipe that off on the clean rag. That's very critical to check the engine oil. As I mentioned, it's the lifeblood of the car. And just have a good look at that under light. We make sure that that is up to or very near the full mark. That doesn't have a hot and a cold. It's like the power steering pump does. Next thing we'll do is we'll come over this side. This big round drum here is the master cylinder. Sorry, I'm very close to the microphone now. I shouldn't be quiet. I'll just wipe the dust off of this. Now, this is the master cylinder, and this is the master cylinder reservoir. Now mine is nice and clear, and I can just shake it gently from side to side and see where the fluid level is at. There is a high mark and a low mark, and I just want to see that at or just under the high mark. You can fill that up when you have new brake pads put on. You can fill that up to the high mark, and as they wear out, that will drop a little bit, just due to the nature of how that system works. And when you put new brake pads in again next time, it will come up to the high mark again. Another very important thing to check, just move this cable out of the way, is the coolant level. Now, I've still got some warmth in that from when I drove to the garage here, so I'm not going to open this. You never open that when it's hot. Why? Because this is a pressurized system. Your cooling system is pressurized. If you open this cap when this is hot, that water will come out under pressure, and you do not want that. It leads to mess, it leads to burns, and it leads to a loss of coolant in your cooling system. What we do have here, if I just get you to look over this side a little bit, what we have here just on this side is the overflow reservoir for the engine coolant. And what you do here is you just pop that lid off and you just have a look in. Now yes, I am in need of some coolant there. I'm not in dire need. If I had some what's called demineralized water, which you can buy from the auto store, you would refill this with either demineralized water or coolant. Now, you also want to check, I'm going to just get your attention back over to the other side. Over here, which is hard to see from your vantage point, but we have a washer fluid reservoir. Now this is for your windscreen wiper washer jets, and in here you just want to pop this lid and have a look in there. You want to see that that's nice and clean. There's plenty of fluid in there. You can get additives for this that help clean the windscreen and help repel rain. I tend to just put water in there, but if you live in an area that's got a lot of bugs or a lot of rain, maybe you'd like to use one of those additives. But in any case, this should always be full, so that when you're out on the road you can clean your windscreen effectively. Now they're the basic checks, your fluids. That ensures that everything's lubricated and cooled. What I also like to do is just give the engine a little bit of a look over. Just touch a few things that you know are supposed to be a certain way. And if you don't know, it's okay. You'll learn as you touch things. One thing I do like to pay particular attention to are the drive belts. And you'll find the drive belts over the side of the front of the motor. And in the case of this engine, we just have the one that serves the alternator, the air conditioning compressor, the power steering pump. Apologies. There are 3. That's how well I know this engine. There is your main one that runs your air conditioning compressor, and there's a double which goes to your alternator and power steering pump. Now what you do is you just have a little bit of a look at these. You kind of grab them, check the tension. Now when you push on it, it should only move at its most, an inch, maybe an inch and a half. If it moves more than that, you might find that it needs a little tightening. But inspect the condition of it. Make sure there's no cracks, it's not rubbing uneven or wearing unevenly. And do the same with the other 2 down there. Just put your fingers on the side and you just give it a little bit of a, and just feel how much play is in those belts. You might like to grab the idler pulley and pull it from side to side and see how that bearing feels. They're usually alright until when they go, they make a hell of a lot of noise first. Have a look around, feel underneath the pipes, see if there's any residue from any leaking fluids that might be indicative of an upcoming problem. These are the kind of things you like to have a look at. Preventative maintenance is far better than being stuck on the side of the road waiting for a tow truck. Aside from that, the only other things that you really want to take notice of are that all your lights are working correctly. You just go around and try the indicators, make sure they're working, try your headlights, get somebody to stand at the back and check your tail lights, put your foot on the brake, make sure your brake lights are all lighting up. Stop at the service station, and if you don't have a tyre pressure gauge, check your tyre pressures. It's an important one, actually. Tyre pressures are quite often overlooked by people. They just don't think about their tyres very much. Unfortunately, it's a lot more important than what most people realise. And what that's and how that affects things is that incorrect tyre pressure I should say, can lead to premature wear of the tyre tread and reduced fuel economy. So what you do, you come along here, you find your valve and you unscrew your valve cap like so. I've got fancy little I got fancy little bullet casing valve caps. Give them a bit of a clean. Put them to the side, and there is your Schroeder valve. This type of valve is called the Schroeder valve, and you can use the tyre pressure gauge to check your pressures. Now, how do you know what your pressures are supposed to be? Well, if you come around to all this writing, there's writing everywhere here. Sizings, types, M&S for mud and snow apparently, although I'm pretty sure this would be terrible in the snow. And somewhere around you have, on this tyre, load range C. Maximum load 1030 kilograms or 2,270 pounds at 350 kilopascals or 50. That's 50 psi, cold, psi being pounds per square inch. That's cold, so that's a maximum load at that pressure. You never run it at that pressure, but that is indicative of its maximum capability. I run these tyres at around 38 to 40 psi. That suits the usage and conditions that I use the vehicle. If you're going into sand on the beach, you drop these down to 15 pounds or so, and if you're going on the highway, you'd go up to 40 pounds. If it's super hot weather, you might only run them at 35, but it's all dependent on conditions, and you really need to learn the vehicle and to know when and how you should use these pressures. So once you've adjusted all your pressures, you put your valve cap back on. You put it on the correct way though. And really important for four-wheel drives also is to make sure you're constant four-wheel drives, such as this, is to make sure all the tyre pressures are the same. The constant four-wheel drive system, all four wheels are interacting together, and if they're not at the same pressure, you get uneven wear in your differential. That goes for two-wheel drive vehicles, mind you. If your left wheel is really flat and your right wheel is really pumped up, the wear inside the differential is inordinate, shall we say, and you do premature damage to the vehicle in that circumstance. Besides these things, just a general look over the vehicle will tell you if there's anything outstanding that needs your attention before you drive. I hope that this got you a little bit of absorbing a little bit of what it takes to love a motor vehicle yourself if you don't want to pay someone else to do it for you. And on that note, I think I'm ready to go for a drive tomorrow. So, happy motoring. We'll meet up again soon though, eh? It'll be good.